Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar today. My name is Sylvia. I'm the Director of Marketing here to kick off this webinar. And we're really excited about this particular one because we'll be showing all the new features and also the upgrades and new products that will be coming out shortly for Evolphin Zoom 7.0 that, of course, you all know about. Before we start, though, I wanted to let you know that there is a Q&A panel and also a chat on the panel that's in your interface. So we'll be taking questions throughout the webinar and we'll be answering them all in the end. And now I'd like to introduce you to our speakers today. So joining us today is Evan Michaels. He is the VP of Video Product Management here at Evolphin. He's going to give you more of a higher level overview of what's to come in Evolphin 7.0. And then our CTO and founder, Rahul Bhargava, will then go into a deeper dive and give you a demo so that you can kind of see in a brief demo what the user will experience. And so without further ado, I am going to hand it off to Evan.
Thanks, Sylvia. Hi, everyone. For those of you new to Evolphin, the company was founded 6 years ago with our first media asset management, or MAM platform, Evolphin Zoom. The goal was to take the burden of media management and make it as efficient and smooth as possible, streamlining how media is produced, managed, and distributed. Evolphin software is now in use at major media companies, ad agencies, and production companies worldwide. As this slide shows, Evolphin Zoom can ingest any file format you throw at it, from camera cards, drone videos, and mobile video to stills, documents, and more. We plug into any infrastructure a company has, whether it be on-premise, in the cloud, or hybrid. We have more software plugins than any other MAM, so users can remain efficiently inside their native applications, such as the Adobe suite, and also work remotely through the suite as well. For distribution, Zoom can automate the sending of media to over 750 platforms, making sharing a breeze. We facilitate the collaboration, management, security, archiving, and more of a company's media. We smooth out the production workflows and save creative teams hours out of the day so they can spend their energy on producing their best work. For this presentation, we're going to cover 4 key areas of the new Zoom platform and dive into each one with Rahul. The first is our new Asset Browser welcome screen, which puts all necessary information at your fingertips for quick action. Then we'll go over how you can share and collaborate on video projects faster than ever before with our front-end and back-end improvements to the Adobe Premiere plugin. And we'll give an overview of the updates we've made across the board to our other plugins for the Adobe suite, including After Effects, InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop. And we'll showcase our powerful new Collections feature, which allows marketing teams, video producers, and anyone else to share media with internal and external teams in a lightweight, modern web interface. They can give timecode accurate feedback on videos, leave markup on media, and collaborate like never before. First up is our updated Asset Browser. Our redesigned Asset Browser home screen allows you to see what you're working on and what has been updated since you last logged in. It brings all relevant information forward so you can make smart decisions more quickly. It's your personal homepage for everything that matters to you. To take a deeper dive into the new features, I'll hand it over to Rahul.
Thank you, Evan. So I will be showing you first a demo of our new Asset Browser. So those of you who are familiar with Zoom, we have a desktop client that is targeted at editors, creative users. They can do versioning and a lot of work in progress workflows using this application. We've added a new homepage to the application. So when you log in, instead of just jumping straight into the repository, you will have a view of all the recent files that you have been working on. So these are files that you have checked out. These could be Premiere project. It could be Photoshop files that you are editing. It could be footage that you have decided to preview and link in your Premiere project. Whatever the assets that you are right now actively working on, those would show up in this home panel. The home panel also supports different views. So if I wanted to get more information about who made what changes to a file, So let's say there was a Premiere project that I was working on and somebody else also edited that. I would be able to see the last contributor and the last activity on the files that I am interested in. Also, on the right-hand side, there is a brand new activity panel. This will allow you to see activity pertaining to the projects that you are working on. So you might have tens of projects established in the Zoom repository, but perhaps you are only involved with a couple of those. So the activity stream would be personalized to the projects that you are involved with. It would show you comments, it would show you any new files that were added by your team members, deletions, etc. You can get it in one glance from this homepage. In addition to the tracking of files that you're working on and activity, we also now have ability to display custom panels in the homepage. So for example, right now I have a task panel that shows all the tasks that I am involved with, the tasks that I'm done with. You will see strike through the name of the task. I also have my favorites panel displaying here. So using the settings in the asset browser, you can decide what panel shows up in here. So from this panel, you can click on any of these files and go straight into the more detailed view. So for example, if I wanted to see what happened with this file, I can double click on it and it'll open up the file in the asset browser. So those of you who are familiar with Zoom 6.0 or lower, you can see the familiar asset browser now shows up. And I have this file, lily.psd, in here. Now, one of the things that you will notice if you are familiar with Zoom is there's a new icon, and this is a smart link icon. So this is a new feature that we have added. What that allows you to do is have a link going to the original content and create a new file name that is pointing to the original file. So I have this lily.psd, for example, in this world called Newsnet NYC. And why would I create a link? This feature is primarily targeted at freelancers or suppliers or contractors that you're working with. So you might have some secured project. You don't want to share everything in that project with your freelance team or with a third party. So on a case-by-case basis, you can select some assets and create smart links to them and share it out in a project that the third party has access to. So for example, the suppliers might have access to just the NYC project here, and they will see the content structured in there. But the nice thing is if they modify this linked file, it'll modify the original content. And you have a choice when you create a smart link, whether to make that writable or not. So to create smart link is very simple. You just click on the smart link option in the asset browser. You can select any asset for creating a smart link. And there is a new option in here, mark the smart link as writable or readable. So if you just want to share it out with a freelancer so that they can incorporate this image in their project, that's fine. You can make it readable. But if you wanted them to make changes, then you make it writable. So with that, I would like to go back to Evan to talk about the other features. So Evan, back to you.
Thanks, Rahul. Next up are updates to the video workflow, including the Adobe Premiere panel. With the explosion of video over the past few years, as I'm sure you know, a streamlined production pipeline can make a huge difference in your productivity. If an editor can't figure out the notes from dozens of emails, or a producer can't find the right clip to use from the company's library of footage, that slows things down to a crawl. Our Premiere plugin takes care of all of that and more, allowing editors to search for assets and add them to their project and receive comments on media right in Premiere. You can also swap a high, medium, or low-res version of an asset instantly with the click of a button. So if an editor needs to work offline or on a low-powered computer, they can check out low-res proxies to edit and then sync back up with the high-res right before export. And with powerful search capabilities, the plugin is your window to all of your media. I'll let Rahul show you the updates in more detail.
All right. So I am opening up Adobe Premiere. When you open up Premiere, we have a brand new panel. You will notice inside all the Adobe apps, including Premiere. This is a plugin that has been written from scratch. So those of you who have used a plugin in 6.0, this is a major improvement in user experience. And the objectives were to make it even more easier to collaborate inside the plugin. So there were a bunch of functions that would have led you to use our desktop clients. Some of those functions have moved into the plugin, particularly the browse option. So if you click on browse, you have the ability to go through the folder structure. So for example, if I were in the global project here, I can drill down just like I would in the asset browser. So if I wanted to, let's say, click on this folder and look at the content in here, I can do that. So the file navigation inside the asset browser or our rich clients or the web clients now is possible within the plugin. Once you are in the view where you see the thumbnails, we have added hover scrub. So the idea is that as an editor, I don't have to open the video file. I can scrub the file directly from the Zoom repository by having the client basically show a low-res proxy preview through this hover scrub mode. So this is really important because in the past, you would have to switch to a different app and then preview the video. Now, before deciding whether to incorporate a video into the project or not, you can preview it right from this interface. Besides being able to preview this video through the hover scrub, if I wanted to see more details, I can click on this video and you will see there's a new view that shows the relevant metadata, the important metadata you can designate that shows up here. And I can also do a full preview inside the panel. So again, I don't need to switch context to a different app. I don't need to go to my SAN and play the video. I can do it right from this interface. As far as search is concerned, we had search in our 6.0 plugin. The search is now more refined. So you have the ability to set up facets. So I have, for example, a brand facet here. If I was looking for assets within the specific brand, or if I was looking for assets within that brand, but within a specific category, I can click on that. And perhaps I only want to see the video asset. So it's very easy to locate assets using the new search filters, and these are all customizable. Once you get to this view, those of you who are familiar with our product, you will realize now that there is a new icon, a cloud icon that shows up with these assets. So depending upon the location of these files, these might be on your SAN and therefore directly linkable, or these assets might be sitting in the repository, which could be hosted on the cloud or on-premise, and you would see a cloud icon, and you can always download the assets to incorporate into your project. Now, in order to incorporate the videos into your project, or any kind of graphics, you simply select the asset. Let's say I wanted to incorporate this file, and you can go and drag and drop and place that file in your Premiere timeline. So it's as easy as that to incorporate a footage or a graphic. Once you have done that, you can check on what files are linked in your project. So when I click on the linked file, there's a new tab here that shows me all the images and footages that are linked in my project. If I wanted to drill down and get a sense for what type of footages are linked, so I can see I have some high-res files in here. There's a low-res version of this. And I can easily switch proxies. So if I click on the low-res option in here, you can see that this particular video now switches to low-res. And why would I do that? One of the use case that we are targeting is remote offices and remote users. So you might have people in the field or in satellite offices or working from home, and they don't have access to the SAN that contains the high-res media, like for some of these files. So you can simply switch to a low-res version. You could select all the files in here. Let's say select all, and then you could hit low-res, and it'll switch all the footages that are linked into this Premiere project to a low-res version. If these files were sitting on the repository or on the cloud, they would be fetched and downloaded into your project working area. And then you can disconnect from the network and do remote edits using the low-res proxies. And the nice thing is that if you want to do a final render, or a teammate at the head office wants to do a final render, they can, again, do the same thing, select all and click on high-res and switch all the versions to the high-res and do a final export. So it makes it very easy to support remote workflows. And unlike other products that require file system access, there's no file system access required for working with low-res proxy. So with that, I would like to go back to Evan again. All right, Evan.
Thanks, Rahul. And I saw some of you are asking about the other Adobe apps, so hopefully I'll answer your questions right here. Go to the next slide. So we've also updated our plugin for the Adobe apps across the board, and they all have full search and sync capability. And I'm going to go through the export capabilities that they have as well. You can sync comments from the MAM right into your project. For Illustrator and InDesign, there's now multi-page export capability. And we now have the capability to extract metadata from thousands of layers in Photoshop files within seconds, which is just mind-blowing. Here's the Premiere panel, which you saw Rahul demo, and how you can export using a variety of presets. Here's the Illustrator panel, where you can choose the format to export, and then a variety of specific settings will pop up depending on the format you choose to control the export. So in this case, it's a JPEG with a quality slider. And our export settings have been tailored for each app. So you'll get specific settings per format, per application. Here's the panel in action in After Effects, where you can choose render presets and modules, such as draft or lossless, and whether to use the work area or the full comp length in your export. And here's the InDesign panel, which allows multi-page exporting and loading of PDF presets for the export. And here's the Photoshop panel, which allows you to choose the dimensions, DPI, and more for your export. And in this case, for a JPEG, again, that quality slider's there. And once you export, the export is automatically synced with the MAM, and so you never have to leave your app. And I'll hand it back over to Rahul to show in the Premiere plugin how exporting works.
Right, so in order to export assets from Zoom, the easiest way is to click on the Exports tab. And when you do that, you would see the export panel. This has been customized for Premiere. There are a number of parameters that control how you can perform an export. For example, you can do a full length, of course, that would export everything that's in the sequence, the entire timeline. Or you can also use in and out markers. And you can use the Premiere mark in, mark out feature to, for example, select a subclip, like I have 8 seconds of subclip from this sequence that I want to export. Our panel will automatically read the mark in, mark out points that you set in Premiere, and then use that with the preset that you set up to do an export. Now, presets, the cool thing is that you can set up presets on the Zoom MAM server and have the presets flow to all the editors in their Premiere panel. And what that ensures is you can have a consistent export quality where everybody is not tweaking the presets and changing the presets for their own specific needs. People can use these standardized presets that the organization has set it up. So right now I have YouTube 1080 preset being used. Now, just in case the presets that are there on the server are not sufficient, one can always browse a preset file. In Premiere panel, Zoom allows you to do that. This is dependent on the facilities that the app provides. On some application like Photoshop, it may not be possible to do that, but with Premiere, it's certainly possible to browse and find a preset. And then the export location. This is another Zoom innovation. When you are exporting, you don't have to set up the output folder. Zoom will automatically detect where your Premiere project is, and based on certain rules that your media manager has set up, it can automatically place the exported file into, for example, an exports folder underneath the episode 1 folder where we are doing the editing. The other feature is syncing after export. So once I finish the export, the panel can automatically sync a copy of this exported file with the repository. So let's click on export and see what happens. So as soon as I click export, that'll trigger a workflow in the media encoder. It'll basically launch the media encoder queue to start transcoding the file in the output location that we desired with the preset that we have set up. And once the transcoding is finished in media encoder, the panel will automatically sync up the asset. Will show you the progress of the export, and once it's 100% done, then the media encoder will tell it to sync. Once the asset is synced, it is now versioned in Zoom. So if I click View in Zoom, it will show us the various revisions associated with this file. So this video, for instance, has 4 revisions that were created, and we exported each revision automatically through the plugin. Once the export is done, you can always save the exported file into a collection. So you have the ability to select a collection from this view. You can select a specific collection by just typing in the name, and you can add this export into the collection, which will be shared out with the users. And that's a workflow that we'll look at in just a moment. The files that are exported, they show up under the exported files. Since we are exporting the same file, we only see one single file. And you will notice that the file name for the exported file is actually automatically chosen by Zoom based on the sequence that you selected. So if you had multiple sequences, in the export dialog, you would select the specific sequence and the file name would be automatically assigned. From this interface, you can also see if this asset is already shared in other collections. So we can see that this file is already added to this collection. Otherwise, you can always export the file and add into a specific collection. With the export functionality, we have integrated the deduplication feature into export. So even if you are generating a highly compressed video, it's not going to upload the entire video again. It's just going to upload the changes. And that's very powerful. You might have added a logo, or you might have done some transitions. Just the changes would be synced from the export panel to the server. And this is worth illustrating through a slide. So let me jump to the presentation here. So in a traditional system, or if you're not using any DAM or MAM, if you're saving your exports on a network share or SAN, you typically end up with multiple revisions saved as full copy. So if you had an export, like I did an export, and that was 10 gigabyte, 2 versions would be 20 gig on the server. But using our export capability with our front-end deduplication, I would have just saved perhaps a megabyte of changes. It depends upon how many changes happened in that video. And why that is important is it reduces the amount of time it takes for an editor or a designer to upload content for review. A lot of our competitors have cloud-based services where you have to go through exporting and then manually uploading or importing the video or graphics into a service, and that takes time. But with a single click of a button now, you can have the deduplication just transfer the changes over to the server. So those are some of the changes in the Premiere plugin with regards to export. With other plugins, like Evan mentioned, we have the ability to export multiple pages, and similar workflows can be set up. Now, these presets are set up on the server for these export. Some of the Adobe apps allow you to set up exports through presets through files. We support all of those apps. Some apps do not allow, and for those we have presets on the client. So with that, let's turn to Evan.
Thank you. Next up is our new web client, which is a lightweight, modern client that runs on any web browser and allows internal and external users to search and interact with media stored on your MAM. For example, if you have a salesperson who doesn't need full access to the MAM, but needs to occasionally upload and find things, this will be a huge time saver for them. They can also crop and make basic edits before distributing the media, so they don't have to go back to the designer if they just need a smaller version of an image or something like that. There's also a personalized homepage showing what's important to you. And I'll let Rahul go into the details on that.
Right. So let's take a look at the new web client. So this is basically our new web client. When you get into the web client, I'll actually start from the beginning. You will see a background image, and this can be customized. So based on your specific brand, you can have a splash image in the background of your choosing. Once you get into the page, based on your login, Zoom will know what your credentials are and what sort of project access you have. And you can have a banner here that can also be personalized so that it shows your specific branding. The logo here could be changed. Instead of our Evolphin logo, you could have your own logo. The home page is designed to show or highlight certain assets. So that is done through this spotlighted assets. So right now I have 3 assets that I have spotlighted, and there is some text that shows up here, like it says preschool kids. You can customize the text that shows up with the spotlighted assets. So the idea with this is the upstream users, the media managers, and your end customers, they can have access to the same repository without having to physically copy the assets into another application server or upload it to the cloud. You can have almost like a finished asset experience through this new web client. Now, in addition to allowing you to spotlight assets, the activity stream that I talked about in the asset browser also follows you in the web client. It'll show you all the activities around the asset. In addition, it'll also show you comment feed. So if people are using our collection features, which we'll talk about in a moment, the replies and comments would show up in here. You would also have an alert that shows up in here. If you want to jump in and look at specific assets, you have the ability to apply filters, and these filters can be customized. So for example, if I wanted to look at just Photoshop file, I can click on PSD and it shows me the files in here. And from this interface, I have different views. If I wanted to see just a simple thumbnail, I can do that. The metadata that shows up at the bottom can be customized. If I wanted to see a more row and column view, I can do that with the metadata customized. If I wanted to add an asset into and make it a spotlighted asset, I can also select the asset from in here and do that. But before I do that, let's go into this asset and see what editing operations can you do. So one of the things that we have added in the web client is ability for the upstream users to be able to do basic image editing. So if you were a marketing manager and perhaps you wanted to pull this logo out of this image and your creative team was busy and you did not know how to use Photoshop, you can click on crop and just select the specific area that you wanted to crop, like just this logo. And you'll notice the format automatically switches to JPEG, and you can click download, and that will basically trigger a render on the server to generate the logo and download that. So it's very easy to crop assets, Photoshop, Illustrator, JPEG, doesn't really matter. If you wanted to, let's say, send this asset to Twitter and you wanted to add some text to it, you can click on Add Text. And in this release, you have the ability to customize the text here. So let's say I wanted to add a rather large banner in here, and I wanted to add this in orange color, so I can type in the text. Once you do that, you can then click on download and it will download the asset with the text. So as a creative, I don't have to, as a marketeer or upstream users, I don't have to reach out to my creative. I can self-serve myself using this interface. If I wanted to bring in new content, it's also very easy to do that. From any of these views, you can drag and drop assets. So let's say there was a bunch of images that I wanted to bring in, perhaps stock images that I wanted to incorporate into my project. I can just simply drag and drop. And from Finder, let's say I wanted to drag and drop this zip file. When I do that, it will automatically ingest the contents of the zip file. And once I click done, clear all the filters, I can see these two new files have been added into my repository. The nice thing is that when people ingest content from the web client, we have created a very simple workflow where the content goes into a section of your repository that you can designate for uploads from external users. So the idea is that you don't want your external users to be putting content in random folders on your repository. So with our workflow, the content goes into a standard location, and a media manager or somebody who's working with the assets can then go and curate that content. Like I just uploaded this image, it goes into a pre-designated folder. Then I can have my media manager apply some metadata and move it into the right folder. So it's very easy to upload content. If there was a folder structure inside the zip file, Zoom will automatically recreate that folder structure when it ingests from a zip. And then the coolest feature is automatic versioning. So sometimes you work with freelancers and other users who might want to exchange a project directory with content, and it may have the same files that they received from you, but they changed it. You can throw that zip file in here, and Zoom can be set up now through the web client to automatically create a new version when that freelancer throws that zip file in. So those are some of the features for the web client. And with that, let's go back to Evan for the next set of features.
Yep, thank you. So in addition to the web client, there's an amazing and powerful new feature called collections. And collections allow the user to handpick assets, share them for review, and streamline the approval process. You can collaborate with internal and external team members, so they no longer have to be within your firewall to securely view your assets. And there's also permissions management control, so you can control who has access to what. You can leave time-coded notes on videos, and you can also visually compare two versions to see what's been updated. And I'll let Rahul show you in detail.
All right, thank you. So with the collections, we have, let's start with the web-based view. So when you click on collections, if you have a license for our collection features, you will start to see the collections that have been shared with you. And you can drill down into these collections. You can add files into the collection. And the idea is that collections allow you to create a grouping of assets in the repository without physically moving the assets. And they will track the versions of these assets. So everything that you see here today is linked back to our strong versioning underpinnings. We're trying to ensure that you don't duplicate content when you have to share, etc. It's all picking up things from the repository by putting pointers in these collections. So if you wanted to add assets into the collection, you can simply go and select the specific asset. Let's say I wanted to add a couple of these assets into the collection, and then you will see a toolbar that will appear here, and that will allow you to add to the collection. You can browse existing collections, or you can search for collections. Let's say I wanted to add this into the modern product campaign collection, and I can click add, and that'll immediately add these assets into the collection, and it'll start tracking the versions of these assets. Now, there are more than one way to create a collection. This is for an upstream users managing the assets. We'll see in a bit if you were an editor and you wanted to send a file for collaboration, you can also do it from your panel. Let's jump into the collection for a moment here. So if you click on the collection, you will see the individual assets. And again, you have different ways of viewing the assets. The assets can be shared with other users. And there are a number of parameters that you can use to control how the assets in the collection are shared out. So we made these sharing options available to the administrator. If you were receiving a collection, you won't have to worry about these parameters. The administrator or the media manager would have applied these. But the nice thing is that these sharing controls are per collection. So you can have a global default, but you can also customize the sharing control for a collection. Perhaps you want to share some assets with executives and you want to give them the ability to comment and approve. Or you're creating a collection and you want to give the ability to freelancers to perhaps only download, or you might be sharing it with a reseller network and they need to download collateral. So based on your scenario, all these sharing options are available to you to control how these assets are going to be shared out. Now, in addition, you can, of course, invite other users to this collection. When a collection is initially created, you are the owner of that. And if you want, you can add more users. So as you start typing in their name, it'll show you an email address from the system. So let's say I wanted to invite Pedro. I can type in other users in here. And I can even put a note for these users when I want to invite them. And when I click send invite, it would basically trigger an invite to these users through a nicely formatted HTML email. And that email template you can obviously customize. And if I go into the current members, it'll show me all the people that I have shared this collection with. So right now I have shared this collection with Pedro and Brad. And then I can do even more fine-grained controls. So there could be a variety of collaborators with whom I'm sharing these assets. Perhaps I want Pedro to be able to comment. But Brad, I want him to only download assets so I can make this a read-only collection for him. So besides controlling the parameters in here, you can also control the sharing rights, basically using the options in here. You would have also noticed that there is a link that you can copy based on how the collection is set up, whether you are allowed to send a link or not. This link will populate. If you're allowed to share a link, you can click on copy link and email that link to people. One of the features that we have added is if you share a link with a user that is not in our system. So if they don't have a Zoom account, if you allow, then they can receive this link and they can view the content. So they can download the assets. In other words, you can send an unrestricted link if you want to allow that so that people don't need a license. In the past, we had required everybody to log in through the web interface in order to access assets. So that is no longer necessary with this sort of anonymous sharing. But we understand there are organizations that have strict security control, and you may not want any private link, unlisted link sharing. You can disable that. The emails that I'm typing in here, the nice thing is that you can pre-populate the server with a bucket list of email addresses that you like to send to. So if you had a supplier network and there were thousands of suppliers, you can populate the server with all those emails. Anytime you send an email, it'll remember that. All right, so we've looked at the user permissions and how to manage collections. Now, let's take a look at an asset inside the collection. Now, once you are in here, you have the ability to add comment at any point in the canvas. So I can click here and add a comment. I can also use the visual tools to markup. But one of the cool things we have added is ability to compare versions right in the web client. Those of you who are familiar with our asset browser, you know that we can allow you to compare versions in the asset browser, but now we have the ability to compare versions right from within the web application, so you can see how an asset in a collection has evolved. All right, so let's go back to now the video use case. So let's say we were, I was an editor and I wanted to export a video and then collaborate with my producers or media managers. So we've already gone through the export workflow in here. Once the assets are exported, they show up in the repository, and then I can click on view collection and I can decide to share these assets that I've exported from Premiere to a collection. So I can share it with an existing collection, or I can click and create a new collection if there is no collection in there. So let's say I've created a brand new video. Nobody knows about this. I can just quickly create a new collection and share it. If I wanted to send it to an existing collection, I just select one Globetrotter campaign, click submit, and that will automatically attach this video into the collection. So if we go back in here, open up this video, and let's say this video was exported out, and we go back into the web client, we can see the same video is in here. And we can also do a hover scrub in this interface in the collection to quickly preview the assets. But if we click on this asset, we can see that the video automatically starts playing. And this is a high-res version of this video that shows up in here. So for video, we've added a lot of improvements in how you mark up videos. So first thing you will notice is that I have ability to browse on a comment marker in the timeline. I can see through the visual feedback here that Sylvia has added a comment. and I'll show a brief, some text from the comment, the first few words, so that I know what was said here. I will also see a history of all the comments that were added in here. If I wanted to add a new comment, perhaps at another point in the timeline, I can just click anywhere in the frame in here, and it will allow me to add a new comment in here. Now, when I add a comment, I can also choose to control who sees this comment. So by default, if you create an annotation as a comment, it's shared with everyone who's a collaborator. But I can also create private notes. So if I create a private note, what that means is these are comments that are meant for me. Perhaps I want to add some reminders or tasks for myself, or to check on few things before I get these comments to the larger audience. So I can choose to have them as a private note if I so desire, and the color coding changes. Now, once I've added these comments in this interface in the web client, these comments are instantly synced in Premiere or wherever the video is or the asset is being exported. So if I look over here, I can see that there are 3 comments in here. And I can click on the comments, and I can see all the comments that are unresolved and that are sitting in the timeline. You have the ability to filter comments very easily using these options, resolved versus unresolved. If I wanted to reply to a comment, I can simply click on reply button in here, and I agree with you. So you can have a conversation with your upstream users, and it'll show you the profile icon. So you can very easily tell who basically made what comments. And if I mouse over here, same thing, it'll show you the marker and what the comment was. If I go back into the web client, then any replies that I have posted will automatically show up in here. So I can see that I just replied, and it shows up in this view. Now, one of the cool thing that we've done is when you do multiple exports, like I've explained, we automatically save the changes as a new version. But what that also allows us to do is compare previous versions of this video. So when I click on the compare option in here, it brings up the same dialog that you saw in the context of Photoshop. Let's say I wanted to compare version 1 and version 3 to see what changed. When I hit compare, it'll simultaneously play back both the videos. So I can play, and it controls, the same control basically applies to both the videos. So I can visually see what changed between the left and the right video. I can see there is a logo, Evolphin logo that has been added here, but there is no logo in here. And so if there are any unresolved comments in this current version, we have the ability to transfer them over to the previous, to the video on the left-hand side. So this is really useful. You might have 50 comments on a video for an editor to fix, and perhaps they got to only 20 of these, and there are 30 unresolved issues. So instead of adding the comments again and again to the video, you can just click on this option, and that will transfer over the comments into the video. So for example, the unresolved comment got transferred in here, and there were a few other comments that were added automatically to this video. So that's how easy is it to compare and manage video. So that's basically enough about collections, and then let's move on. Evan mentioned that we have the ability to distribute to other application. Now, this is enabled using integration hub called Zapier. You have access to around 800 different apps, from CMSs like WordPress or social channel like Facebook or Twitter, to publish content from within Zoom to the third-party app. It's very easy to set up integration. You don't need to be a programmer. You can just log in into the web administration here. You can set up a trigger. So for example, right now we're setting up publishing to WordPress. So you can choose to either create a post or upload media. You can specify how the data in WordPress, how the post in WordPress is automatically structured using metadata. Perhaps you want to use the asset name as the file name, or the title of the post using the metadata in the repository. So you can marry the metadata that you have in the MAM for that specific asset version with the asset that is going to be sent to the WordPress CMS. And once you set this up, you basically save this as a trigger. So anytime the metadata changes in the MAM, the metadata field that we might be monitoring is, let's say, published to WordPress. So as soon as the system notices that there are now, let's say, 300 new images that have been marked as published to WordPress, this trigger will automatically run behind the screen, select all those 300 files, and publish that to WordPress. You can also set up a reverse workflow where there might be content that's sitting in a Dropbox that you want to bring into Zoom, and a trigger can be set up to notice the content in a specific folder and bring it here. So it makes it very, very easy to integrate with third-party apps. A couple of case studies to go through for Zoom 7.0. So one of our customer, they are a car manufacturer. They have a number of suppliers that collaborate on designing the car with them. And they needed to share out specific files from a model of the car. And it was very difficult to do that because previously they would have to upload these files to a FTP server, and then the suppliers would get to these files. Now using Zoom 7.0, they can set up a collection, share that with the supplier. They can download the assets and then upload it through the web client. They also work with large design files. Some of the files have like 3,000 layers. In the previous version of Zoom, it would take up to 20 to 30 minutes to extract the layers information from a Photoshop file and index that in Zoom. Now with 7.0, that time goes down to 3 to 4 seconds. So essentially, scalability is a big theme with 7.0. Another large company, a media company, that is using us for producing video and publishing it to social media. They produce thousands of videos every year. They need to work with remote users who need to be able to switch to low-res proxies because they have a crappy internet connection. So they don't need a file system access. They can download the low-res versions of these proxies from the Premiere timeline and quickly edit. And when they want to do an export, they can use the export function to publish quickly. So with that, I'll turn the control to Sylvia.
Thanks, Rahul and Evan. So before we hop into questions, and feel free to keep them coming, I've been keeping a list of them. I just wanted to let you know that if you'd like to contact us, or if you have any questions on anything else, feel free to do so at sales@evolphin.com, or you can also find us at info@evolphin.com. And also just to keep up to date with all the events and upcoming webinars and products and what's going on, follow us on Twitter. And also, we've been adding lately lots of informational and educational blogs on our website. And so, around the space and media and video asset management that you might be interested in. So please check that out. And with that, I'm going to hop into the questions. Actually, right before that, there will also be a recording of this webinar that we will be sending out. So look for an email if you want to share with others. Okay, so I'm going to try to get through all of these questions. If we don't, then we'll email individuals all of your answers, so we won't forget anybody. First up, someone asked, how do I ingest existing 100 terabytes worth of media on my SAN? Would I need to copy everything into your MAM again?
So I'll answer that, Sylvia. Now, you don't have to copy things when you ingest. We have the ability in Zoom, and this has been there since our 6.0 product with our video effects module, to do our in-place indexing. A lot of our customers have existing footage, hundreds of terabytes, or sometimes even petabytes. They have no intention of copying these files. So we can ingest in place by indexing the content without any physical copy.
Okay, thanks, Rahul. And then someone asked, while you were running the Premiere Pro plugin during the hover scrub, are JPEGs being generated for those keyframes for the hover scrub? And can you define how often a JPEG is generated?
So it uses a low-res MP4 for the hover scrub. So it's actually not a sequence of JPEGs. So as many frames that line up with the pixels of the hover scrub is what you'll see. So it's a good fidelity there.
Okay, and then next question, can a remote user download a high-res version even if they don't have SAN access?
So yeah, I can answer that. So that depends on how you set up the download options in the web client. So we have a very flexible transcoding framework that's tied into our download. So you could set up, if you want, a download option to target the high-res media. So somebody could select a video, click from the drop-down, which says, let's say, high res, and if they want to download original, then obviously no transcoding is needed. It can be done, but I don't know if you would want to do that because the content could be pretty large. If you had, let's say, a 8K stream, you could have 50 gig of content and video, and would you want to download that through the web client? Most of the time, what we see customers do is set up accelerated file transfers. So let's say a location in LA needs to get some high-res content and the high-res media is sitting in New York. You can set up workflows in our system to trigger accelerated file transfer using any of the WAN acceleration product to move large media files from one location to another. But if the files are reasonable size, then yeah, absolutely, you can download native content from the web client.
Okay, thanks, Rahul. And then someone said that they already have an existing asset management system. So how would I integrate with an existing MAM or a CMS, or how to Zoom?
So integration, you have a number of options. We can index assets from any repository. So whether the assets are sitting in YouTube or on a SAN or even a third-party DAM or MAM. A lot of our customers, they have had DAMs from prior years, and they might have finished content, let's say. They have no intention of changing that. So we can easily index content from other systems. There are a number of integrations that we support out of the box. We have a framework that can be easily customized. So once we do the indexing, essentially a placeholder object gets stored in Zoom that can tie into the object in the third-party system, so that when you perform a search, it's a unified search. You can find content across repositories, across SANs.
Okay, thanks, Rahul. And then also, I think this was based on the cropping and editing function within the web client. They asked, is it possible to limit the functionality on the self-serve? And I think self-serve meaning when you crop and edit. And I think they're asking, you know, how much people can update. Can we limit, you know, if you don't want them to update so much information, can you limit it?
Yeah, so that is controlled through the sharing parameters that I was showing in the demo. So you can control what they can do with these assets. You can set up policies where they can only download a lower resolution version of these assets. You can control whether the assets can even be shared out of the corporate domain. So you might want to restrict sharing to within, let's say, acme.com, and nobody outside that domain, acme.com, should see the content. So there are a number of parameters that you can use to control the sharing.
Okay, and is this in the cloud or on-premise?
Yeah, so we offer a hybrid model, or just in the cloud or just in premise. So whatever you need to have for your infrastructure, and we work with you based on whatever your requirements are. And especially for, like we introduced the collections, even if you have only on-premise, where you need all your media on your own servers in your own infrastructure, we still have the ability for you to share and collaborate outside of your firewall, so you're not being hampered by the infrastructure requirements there.
Okay, thanks, Evan. Somebody asked, I believe this is the case, but is the plugin available in Cinema 4D? I can say yes to that, but is there anything else that you guys can add to it?
Yeah,
how it works.
Yeah, so the Cinema 4D plugin, you know, you can render from Cinema 4D and automatically sync afterwards. And also there's a great feature that we've developed that a lot of creatives using Cinema 4D will render a Targa or a TIFF or a PNG sequence of images for their render, but you don't want to have thousands of these images just clogging your view and your folder structure in Zoom. And so the feature we've developed is the image sequences are grouped together when they're checked in. So one will serve as the thumbnail viewing it in Zoom, but they're all checked in and grouped together. So managing and tracking it is a lot easier.
Thanks, Evan. Someone asked also, can you force metadata entry on specific fields for assets ingested through the web client?
Yes, you can. The web client has basically a very simplified interface, the one that you were looking at. That's the upstream user's web client. You can have metadata templates defined in the server. So when content is uploaded, it can capture the default metadata. Once the content is uploaded, you can of course curate the metadata. With the web client, we didn't want to complicate the view with a more complex metadata form that's really meant for the desktop client. And then we also have a more powerful, thicker web client that's essentially our Zoom asset browser that you saw on the desktop running in the web. And that can have a full-blown metadata form. So based on the use case, who's bringing these assets in? Are these upstream users, producers, and managers? Or is this somebody in studio who understands all the metadata form? You can use the specific app.
Okay, thanks, Rahul. Next question that came in, how does Adobe Team Projects fit in with your Premiere panel?
So the Adobe Team Projects, they have focused primarily on switching, basically the syncing the timeline. So if you had, let's say, 100 footages or media files that you were linking in your team project, you could synchronize the sequence and another editor could open it up in a remote location. They would see the sequence with the files. But the hardest problem that it does not address is two problems. One is, how does the media get to the remote location? So it's all great to sync the timeline, but it's of no use without the media. So that problem is left as an open problem with the team project, and that's where Evolphin comes in. So you can synchronize the media, basically the proxies across the cloud, across the various data centers. We have a product called Zoom Nonstop that allows you to create multiple active nodes, or even with a central MAM, you have the ability to work with the media from anywhere. So your sequence could be exchanged using Team Project or using a sync in Zoom. The key thing is the media is managed by us, and that's the hard problem that we solve.
Okay, thanks, Rahul. Somebody asked about deduplication. Is it only applied to version files, or can it work on true duplicate files, like two of the same file in separate locations on the SAN?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, in 7.0, we have added a feature for duplicate detection. So this is based off the file or the proxy in the MAM. So when you try to ingest a video, and that video, let's say, exists in a different folder, but it has the same file name, and now you're trying to ingest into a completely different directory, Zoom can automatically perform a search on ingest and find out the duplicate video, and then report back to you whether you want to override or you want to discard. So that duplicate detection feature now is part of 7.0 desktop client.
Okay, thanks, Rahul. Question that came in for collections. Can you set expiration dates and times for the links that you send for outside users?
Sure, yeah. So right now in this 7.0 release, you cannot set an expiration date on these collections, but you can set up a scheduled job to reap these collections basically after they are more than certain days old. But what we have started with the web client and web collection is just the beginning. There are a lot more features that are coming in 7.1, and we are looking for feedback from our customers to see what other features would make sense. Expiration of collections, that has come up, and so we are certainly interested in looking at that.
Okay, thank you. And then someone asked about the Zapier integration. Is it an extra cost, or how does that work with Zoom?
So Zapier integration, it is correct, is something that you basically go through zapier.com. They have various models. There is a free model where you are allowed certain number of triggers every day or every month. If the amount of data that you are publishing or you're integrating with non-premium apps, then you don't have to pay. But if you are looking at a large volume of assets being published or ingested, then yes, there is a model. There's a fairly efficient model that they have that is based on how many zaps or how many triggers are fired, and that will be something that you would manage directly with Zapier.
Okay, thanks, Rahul. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. We will definitely email answers to all the questions that came in that we haven't answered yet. And as I said before, we'll be sending out a recording shortly. So look for that in the next day or two if you'd like to rewatch. And of course, contact us if you have any questions. So thanks everyone for joining.